And let's get started. Phil Morgan, Director of Apporto UK.
Excellent, thank you, Connie. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Apporto UK launch webinar. Thank you for joining. We're delighted to have you all with us today, and we'll show you how with only Wi-Fi and a browser, Apporto can deliver Windows, Linux, and even Mac desktops to any device. We'll also be taking questions. We'll have time for questions during demo as well. But if you do have any questions along the way, please feel free to share those in the chat box. You don't have to use the Q&A option. You can just put them in the chat box. We'll try to answer those for you as we go along, and certainly we'll have some time for that a little bit later too. So I'm Phil Morgan, a Managing Director of Apporto here in the UK. And I'm joined today by Anthony Ueda, CEO and founder of Apporto, live from California. And Solutions Architect Phil Spitzy is based in New York State, and Phil will be leading us through a demo in just a little while. But first of all, I'd like to hand over to Anthony to share some background to Apporto and our success in North America.
Thank you, Phil. I'm very excited to obviously welcome UK universities to this call, and obviously I'm equally excited to have you on the team. It's been great having you on the team. So Apporto was founded in 2014 with the specific intent to deliver a next generation virtual computer lab to universities. You know, many virtualization solutions start by saying, you know, we want to solve the customer, the general market need of, you know, the general commercial marketplace. At Apporto, when talking to universities, local universities like Stanford and UCLA, they told us that even though they had virtualization solutions that did not fulfill the needs of higher ed institutions. So we started with that mission, and we must have been lucky or smart, depending on how you look at it. Since then, we've acquired more than 200 higher ed customers. One of the things that sets us apart is that we are an internet native company. Everything we deliver it with a SaaS mindset. You know, the traditional mindset is that, you know, if you want to do virtualization, you have to buy hardware, you have to buy licenses, you have to install a lot of software, you have to manage it. With Apporto, it's all SaaS-like, meaning you don't have to buy any hardware unless you go with our hybrid approach. You don't have to worry about updating, patching, any of that. It's all taken care of for you, and we're going to see that in the demo. We take great pride in making each customer a reference. Even though there are 6,000 universities in the United States, they all know each other very, very well. So obviously, we want to make sure every one of them speaks very highly of our service to other universities. So we maintain a 96% retention rate. And we tell our customers it takes 2 weeks to onboard them. Though I want to point out that during the pandemic, we onboarded a customer over a weekend. California State University, Bakersfield, they called us on Friday. They said, you know, we're desperate. We are being told that the campus is going to be closed on the weekend. We need this service up and running by Monday. What can you do? And our engineers worked with their engineers throughout the weekend, and their service was up and running on Monday. I'm not saying we should do that or you should do that, but just to tell you what is possible to do with this SaaS service versus a traditional virtualization service. And with that, thank you, Phil. I'm going to hand it over back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. So for those of you who have not met me before, I'm Phil Morgan. That's me there at the BET conference last week in London. Despite what you may think, that is actually Captain Apporto pictured. He was quite a hit with the school children. Many school children on school trips to the conference came by and wanted photos there. But so I've been working in higher ed almost 20 years now, actually, and for many of those years I worked at Lancaster University, where I was responsible for IT in the business and medical schools, and I was also responsible for the managed desktop there. and the rollout of new Windows operating systems over the years, and changes such as removing admin rights from users. So I'm just about able to show my face there again now after that. But I also have a lot of experience with virtualization. So over the last 10 years, I've met over 150 universities and colleges all across the UK, Europe, and the US involved in desktop and application delivery. And so one of the things that I did upon joining Apporto is to reach out to about 40 plus universities in the UK to understand, the current trends and challenges and how Apporto might fit here like it has in the US. And I just wanted to share with you some of the main themes that came out of those conversations. Many universities talked about digital equity and the importance of ensuring that all students are empowered to learn with the device that they bring to university. And that often includes a need to access specialist software. That still seems to be at least 80% Windows-based software, but now needs to be available to students on Mac, on tablets, and even Chromebooks seem to be on the rise. And I heard that to be able to support BYOD, they're often a kind of complicated combination of different technologies and clients being used, whereas everybody's trying to provide a consistent experience. And from an equity point of view, we should perhaps be guaranteeing the same experience to all students, regardless of which device they have. Lots of people also talked about hybrid learning. And I think how, post-COVID, there's been an even greater drive to rethink learning spaces, to move from traditional labs to kind of flexible open learning. And there are continued pressures on existing lab space. Also, many universities seem to have growth in distance learning and particularly subjects like cyber security, which obviously has quite complex teaching requirements. A couple of universities I talked to recently talked about needing to add 300 cybersecurity students at very short notice, and that's quite difficult to do with kind of existing physical solutions. So we have something at Apporto around that I think you might find interesting as we get to the demo later. There's also this continued move to cloud services, but I like this phrase. This came up a few times in my conversations, which is cloud smart. So not necessarily cloud first, but cloud smart, choosing the right workloads to run in the cloud. And in one of the recent UCISA webinars that I attended, one CIO from UK University commented that too much time is lost looking after our own tin. He said there are now companies that can do that for us at a much larger scale, more efficiently, and Apporto is of course one of those. And a desktop as a service or software as a service obviously makes a lot of sense to run in the cloud at that scale. Also, lots of people talked about hiring issues. So, a lot of vacant posts, a lot of difficulties around staff turnover. So often the challenge is trying to build out solutions at an individual institution. Then when there are changes, people move on to other projects, their staff turnover, it becomes difficult to support those going forward. And then lastly, cyber essentials, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Mandates things like the frequent updating of software, ensuring that software is patched and up to date. And again, that can be challenging and I think is something that Apporto will be able to help with. So hopefully some of those things resonate with you guys here. Obviously, welcome to comment in the chat if you think there's anything that you would add or any comments or queries about those. We can chat a little bit more about those later on. But to explain the solution that Apporto offer and to lead you in a demo, I'm going to hand over to our solutions architect, Phil Spitzy.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil, and good afternoon, all. Yeah, so the menu of services that Apporto provides address all of those different concerns and trends, and we have a very similar matching set over here in North America as well. So what we've got on offer are virtual computer labs, as Phil mentioned earlier, where we can deliver Windows, Linux, or Mac-based full desktops or just individual applications. Modular cyber labs, which I'll show you. This is the platform for delivering cybersecurity classes, any kind of server administration classes. Really, it's an isolated environment for students to learn hands-on how to work with servers, networks, appliances, etc. We also extend to the employee side of universities as well. So often there are still folks who are hybrid workers, in the office 4 days a week, at home 1 day a week, or the like. And connecting them via VPN can be quite risky, particularly if that connection is made from an unmanaged or unowned device. And without having any visibility into the health state of those devices, connecting via VPN is quite literally lowering the drawbridge and letting bad things in. So we can solve that. That also includes remote vendor or contractor access. Oftentimes, particularly here in North America, there are scenarios where there's a contractor that needs to log into a campus system, whether it's the heating and cooling system, a security system, et cetera. Again, that's coming in from an unmanaged or unknown device. And at present, VPN is probably the choice, but again, that's the risky choice. And then lastly, just kind of a catch-all of custom cloud desktops. Our team, engineering team, loves a challenge. So we are always on the lookout for use cases that we haven't seen before. So if there's anything that you're struggling to deliver or are curious if it would be a good fit for our platform, certainly bring that forward. Next up, Phil. So a few features to highlight, and then we'll jump into a demo. So I think probably most importantly from the student perspective, also though a little bit on the IT side, is that everything delivered through Apporto is done in the browser. There are no clients that need to be downloaded and installed, which means that IT has no clients that need to be supported. As we said already, no VPN requirements there. We handle that on the back end. We are able to deliver all manner of applications, including the heavyweight GPU apps, with a very light bandwidth requirement. For the different faculties around campus and individual academics, we've got some great integrations with the major VLE platforms. I will show you in the demo our synchronous learning platform called Virtual Classroom. This is an exciting feature that I think everybody will like. And then we also surface learning analytics. So looking at student usage as it pertains to student outcomes of technology, and that can be quite unique. As Phil said, we are a managed service, and Anthony said as well that it's a SaaS mindset. So we're going to take on a lot of the work for our customers, but we're not going to completely lock you out. So we're going to give you access to some tools, and we'll provide some training so that you can do some lightweight self-management if that is your desire. Otherwise, hand everything back to us and we can manage it for you. And for the budget holders, this is the beautiful part. There is a low predictable annual subscription model on offer, and simply looking at the different performance requirements of the software that you want to deliver for the different programs and calculating out the number of seats required, and very easy math. And briefly, just looking at the managed service from kind of the side view, everything below the orange line is what we do automatically for all of our customers. The most important being the middle, cost optimization. Going to the cloud can be quite tricky, and there is a real risk of cost overruns. We're going to take care of that, and we're going to make sure that you stay within the contract limits and the subscription limits so that there are no surprises. Above the orange line, the management console is where your IT team can take participation in a managing of users, of groups, applications, desktops, etc. Everybody at the very top layer is going to get an awesome cloud desktop solution right in their browser. Okay, next, Phil. So again, just to sum it all up, Wi-Fi browser done. We cannot make it any simpler than that. And that's hopefully what you'll see as a takeaway here in the demo. All right, so let's get going. Perfect. Just confirm for me, Phil, that what's coming through. Got it, awesome. So there's really two entry points to Apporto for students and for academics. The first is through the App Store, which you can see here. This will give a list of the different applications, websites, even downloadable apps and full desktops that a student or faculty might have access to. Again, all based on permissions and access. The other way, though, is, as I mentioned before, is through the VLE integrations. And this is where it starts getting exciting, because embedding Apporto resources into a VLE basically does automated provisioning of software and desktops directly to user groups. We're actually reading from the VLE the different student enrollment information by course, and you can map different resources on Apporto to those courses, and then there's no extra work required to deliver software. We have a demo environment of Canvas, but we support Blackboard, Moodle, D2L as well. And you can see I've got enrollment here in an engineering course. I can see that I have some homework assignments due, and right over on the left menu, I have access to a full virtual desktop from Apporto that I can use to complete my homework assignments. So clicking that will launch me into a traditional Windows desktop. Again, as Phil mentioned, 80, maybe even higher, 85% of all academic software is Windows-based still. So this makes a lot of sense. There's also a good opportunity here, particularly for new students who are coming in with a Mac or maybe coming in with a Chromebook, to expose them to Windows. More often than not, when they are graduates and entering the workforce, they're going to be working on the Windows platform at their first job. This is an opportunity to kind of get them familiar with the environment. So I've been single signed on, which again is useful for students, nice and easy. And the first thing to note is that all users on Apporto get a persistent profile. And that means two things. They can store some of their homework files right on the desktop, makes it easy for them to find and continue working on. And then secondly, they can make configuration changes to some of the software. So if they want certain toolbars to always show, maybe they want to change the language of the software to their native language, they can do that. And those settings will persist from session to session, regardless of where they log in from. The other part of the persistent profile is through our Cloud Mounter. So this is a utility that we offer to users that allow them to connect securely to cloud storage. And then that connection is also stored as part of the profile and is represented every time they log in. So Google Drive, OneDrive, things like this. We can even map back to an on-campus file server for a department or faculty drive, or even individual home drives. And again, that's part of the profile. In terms of performance, there can be some hesitation around only access via browser, but we've solved that through the use and development of our own streaming protocol called Hyperstream. So I'm going to launch a demo here using SolidWorks, very, very heavyweight engineering application used for 3D modeling. And with most other platforms, you wouldn't even attempt this. But because of the Hyperstream protocol, we're able to deliver what we call a near native experience in the browser. Again, nothing to install. I've got nothing running on my machine. We're simply using the compute power in the cloud and delivering that all through the browser. So we have a wonderful, really fun Star Wars model here that's coming up of our, I guess you could say, our Star Wars hacker. And just to show off the performance that we're able to get, I'm just going to rotate this model around and do a little bit of zooming. And you should see, even via the webinar screen share, just how smooth this looks. So there's very little lag. There is no choppiness involved. And it just is, again, that near native experience. And that's, again, all due to that streaming protocol Hyperstream. Also, when I zoom in, I'm able to select individual components, surfaces, even edges with kind of pixel perfect precision, if you will. So we're able to interact with this model with very high levels of fidelity. This is really critical for engineering applications, for art applications, design applications, where they need to make very, very specific and intricate selections. And it's no struggle at all for me. I just move my mouse. I'm able to select on any given component. So hopefully that came through okay over the screen share. A couple of other fun features to call out, and we're not going to do the complete demo. We'll save some of that for future calls with you all individually. But some really fun collaborative features built into the platform as well. First off is a screen sharing option. So a student or user can choose to share their screen with any other user that they would like. And they have control over whether that's a view only, a view and annotate, or a full control link. And this helps students, working in teams or working with a lab partner, be able to collaborate on a project from a single session without even needing to be in the same space. So rather than huddling around a computer in a lab in the basement, they can sit at the student union, they can sit at the local coffee shop or the local pub and be able to collaborate together, or be in completely different cities and still collaborate on an assignment. So this is very, very powerful. The second collaborative feature is one that I mentioned. And before I do that, I forgot to mention part of so the VLE integration that we have is once I'm completed my homework assignment, right from the toolbar again, I have the option with a couple of the different VLE systems to submit homework files back. So this creates a really nice round trip experience for the student where they started in Canvas, they launched a desktop, they did some work, and now right from Canvas again, they choose the homework assignment they were working on, and then simply upload that file to be graded. Again, all right from within the Apporto desktop. Okay, so moving on to the next collaborative feature, and this I mentioned in the slides, which is our virtual classroom. This is a synchronous learning experience and platform, really, really perfect for distance learning, as well as really just bringing together groups of students who may not physically be in the same place. To activate this feature, I actually need to be logged in as an academic. So I'm using one of our super admin features here in order to impersonate an academic in order to gain access to this feature. So you can see in the upper right, I'm now logged in as Professor Higgins. I'm going to launch a desktop for the professor and be able to now log in and access the virtual classroom feature. So that now appears on our Apporto toolbar. I can launch that, choose the class that I want to open the classroom for. And what this does is give me as an academic a thumbnail view of every student who has logged in to a desktop for class. It's going to refresh in pretty much near real time. There's maybe a 1 second refresh cycle as we query all of the different desktop sessions to see where students are at. And you can see my one student example here working on R2D2. So you can envision kind of rows of thumbnails, again, one for each student session who's logged in. And I'm able to keep an eye on all the students and as they progress through lab work. On the student side, I'm able to raise my hand to request assistance, and that flags my thumbnail to the academic. They can click to zoom in, get a closer view at what I'm working on, and then also they can activate a one-on-one private chat, either text-based or voice, and we handle all of that through the Apporto system. So there's no special voice client that needs to be installed. It's all done through, again, the browser. So they can have that quick conversation with the student. How do you need some help? And then if the student requires hands-on assistance, the faculty or academic can request remote control. The student will approve that. I can take some clicks to get the student unblocked and moving forward again, and then simply go back to watching the whole class and seeing who needs help next. So again, very, very powerful. This was actually requested from our customers and we put into the product a couple years ago. I think is a fantastic option and really is going to serve, hybrid learning and distance learning quite well. All right, let me close a couple of things here and then we'll show you 2 more features and then we will head over and answer some questions. Okay. So let me go back to being me. Plenty of granularity in the system. So if you're publishing applications, you can do so to the entire environment. You can do so by individual course. And again, most of the time, these course groupings or these user groupings are coming from the VLE, so it can be automated all the way down to individual student or user accounts. So very high levels of granularity there. That also applies to the different features that you can turn on and off within the environment. So turning off things like uploads and downloads, the screen sharing function, the messenger, copy, paste, etc. All of those can be, and again, very granularly controlled. Another fun feature that we offer is the ability to do license reservations. When you start offering software available from anywhere on any device, you run the risk of contention around certain software titles between students doing homework and when a class is in session. So we offer this license reservation system to help with the classroom experience. It's very simple. You find the date and time that your class is occurring, and you simply create a license reservation for that particular resource. Maybe in this case, it's the full Windows desktop, or it could be SolidWorks as I demoed with. And you simply tell Apporto you want there to be 25 licenses on reservation. This tells the system to make sure that at that time on that day for the start of class, we have enough licenses. And leading up to the start of that class, I think it's 35, 40 minutes in advance, the system will start checking. And if it sees there are not enough licenses, it will notify those users who are logged in to please save their work and log out and release those licenses for the next class. It's not a perfect approach, but it is a great balance. The alternative for most schools is to simply spend more money on more licenses, and nobody wants to increase their budgets, right? That's just not a great solution. So this is a good balance between user experience and budgeting. The final feature to show off is the academic or learning analytics. We do give full analytics around use of the system, as you can see here, but the academic or learning analytics is really, really powerful, and I think will become very important over the long term. So individual academics can come in and look at usage of their class against a specific resource that goes with that class. In this case, I'm just going to choose the Windows desktop. And what they're presented with is cumulative usage across all of their students. We've broken it into standard learning percentiles, and you can see a good range of usage by students for this class and this particular desktop. Now, as an academic, if I know I've got a student who is struggling, I may want to investigate, is it a technology problem that is holding them back? So I can come into the class roster below, select that student that I want to investigate, and have their usage added to the graph here for comparison. So we can see with the red line that my student max is below the lowest percentile on average. And so we have a data point here where we can now reach out and say, Do you have a laptop problem? Do you have an internet problem? Or do you just need some additional assistance learning the software? We don't know what the case is, but we have this data point around technology now, and we can reach out, get in front of the problem, hopefully, and improve Max's student outcomes going forward. So this has been just a very brief look at some of the features. The last thing I think to show is our modular cyber labs. And again, this is a very powerful program. I'll launch it from the App Store in this case. So again, this has been assigned to me with the correct permissions. And what I'm going to log into is, in this case, a dedicated Ubuntu-based VM that is leveraging nested virtualization. And what that means is that I have, through our modular CyberLab console, access to a variety of different virtual machines and appliances so that I can get hands-on and learn about networking, learn about penetration testing, ethical hacking, working with malware, whatever the scenario is for the class. And I'm able to do so isolated from the campus network and ensuring that I'm not going to cause any kind of disruption to the production network. So as you can see here, I've opened a template. I've got some endpoints on the right, routers and switches in the middle, servers over here on the left. And this is a template that was created for me either by my academic team or by the IT team, where I can now interact with all these devices. I can boot them. I can log in as root or admin. I can configure them, and I can go through all of the different course exercises that might be assigned to me. So very, very powerful platform here. Again, more features to show, but I do want to leave enough time for questions and answers. So at this point, I will turn it back over to Phil.
Awesome, thank you, Phil. So before I take back the screen share, just going to have a look. I got a couple of questions direct to me in the chat, but I think other people should be able to post questions now as well. So just a couple of the quick ones. Do users need fast broadband or fast internet?
Very good question. In actuality, it's not bandwidth as much as it is latency. I'll show you here, we include a little network quality meter right on the toolbar for all users, so they can get a look at the bandwidth usage going on as well as the network latency. So in actuality, a low latency connection with low bandwidth is actually better for cloud services than a high bandwidth, high latency kind of usage, right? So it's more about the latency. And the way that we help solve that is we position data centers all around the world, and we automatically detect where a student is logging in from, and we'll connect them to that nearest data center so that they are getting the lowest latency connection.
Awesome, thank you, Phil. And then just to confirm, I got another question around are all browsers supported? So yes, essentially, as long as you've got HTML5 supporting browser, then we can do that. I think if I understand correctly, we test on Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Safari. So we test on all of the major browsers, but yeah, as long as you've got HTML5, that is good. And then also a question around, do you support thin clients or zero clients? Which essentially is the same thing. If there's a browser available, then we can deliver to those thin clients as well. I think nowadays most thin clients have a feature that allows you to kind of boot into a browser, so you can do that straight away. Obviously, you can re-image devices to be able to do that as well. And then a couple of other questions come in about our Apple Mac environment. So perhaps, Phil, if I could ask you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and launch it. It's probably asleep, but it'll come alive here pretty quickly. Yeah, so we're able to deliver full Mac desktops and individual Mac apps through the browser, just like I showed with Windows and with the modular CyberLab. And the way that we're doing that is through a Mac hardware partner. So Apple is very, very restrictive, as you know, with their licensing. So we have contracted for Mac hardware in the back end, and we're simply connecting to virtual Mac desktops through the browser to enable that. So this will come alive here in just a second, and you'll see that I've got access to a full Mac environment where I'm connected from a Windows machine in this case. So maybe I'm enrolled in a class learning iOS development, you know, and I need access to Xcode. I can do that very easily right from the Apple environment here. You can see I've got Xcode installed. Or if the preference of my academic is to use the Adobe suite from a Mac, I can do that as well. Or even maybe take advantage of some of the specialty Mac apps that are only available from Apple.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. And then as it happens, one of the other questions that came in was about can we run Adobe CC on the platform? I believe we have many customers running Adobe.
I would guess that all of our customers are probably running Adobe.
Yeah.
But mostly begrudgingly. I think everybody agrees Adobe is a difficult one to live with. But of course is an industry standard and has to be offered. And yeah, we have not run into any issues delivering that with Apporto.
Awesome. I think from the licensing point of view with Adobe, obviously they have a couple of different options nowadays. I believe named user licensing has become more popular, but they can also license on a labs basis, I believe, still in the UK. So it's usually possible to be able to license those kinds of applications. And often it's simpler to license apps for kind of a cloud lab, if you like. Because we can often treat the Apporto virtual desktops as kind of an extension of your campus desktops and use the same licensing mechanisms, the same models as you're using already. And then, yep, just that follow-up question then. So is this available? Sorry, is this access available remotely when not on campus? Yes, so you can connect to Apporto virtual desktops from anywhere. And we actually use geolocation features as well. So some of our university customers are supporting learning all over the globe, might have remote campuses, might have students working in different geographies, and we can support that as well. We can direct the students so that they get their desktop delivered from the nearest data centers in the cloud. So they get the best latency as Phil described a little bit earlier. Okay, if you have any other questions, feel free to pop those in. There was a question about how we do software deployment and can we use existing software deployment methods with Apporto cloud desktops as well. I know the answer is yes, but I might ask Phil to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so if you're using something like SCCM or Intune or a different application virtualization process, we are just another Windows endpoint for those systems. So absolutely, we'll install those agents for you, and once students log in, we'll have that software already deployed. However, we have simplified the process as well. I know Anthony likes to say that packaging software for SCCM deployment is a bit of a black art, and he's not wrong. Using other products, like cloud paging as an example that I've worked with in the past, I think it's a ninja black art at that point because it is a very tricky business to get right. We've dramatically simplified that. And in a follow-up demo, we can dig deeper into that and show you exactly how that works.
Awesome, thank you, Phil. And then there was a follow-up question on Adobe. So I think just to kind of clarify, obviously we're not trying to circumvent software vendor licenses. Software needs to be licensed for the environment where it's going to be used. So we can use the existing license activation for vendors. If you've got campus license servers, we can put in secure VPN tunnel between the Apporto cloud and be able to connect to your campus license service to activate software. Obviously, it's a native desktop, so all of the normal software activation methods will work just fine, but we're not trying to circumvent software licensing. Obviously, you need licenses in place. What we would say is it's usually a lot easier to license for a virtual labs environment than it is to have to license for every individual student device. for students to download software and run locally. So it typically is a little bit simpler. Okay. So I'm just going to wrap up with a couple more topics to cover. So I'll go back to screen sharing here. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Okay,
We
so
got you.
Excellent. Okay, so before we wrap up, I just wanted to pick out a few of the key benefits of Apporto. So I think those are that we provide true digital equity. Yeah, you can access Apporto on any device with a HTML5 browser. So all students get the same experience. We provide the kinds of tools that are needed for collaborative learning. And that really allows you to rethink lab spaces, provide more flexible teaching spaces. We are a true SaaS solution, and what that means is we can deploy very quickly. So typically 1 to 2 weeks setup time. And we also work as an extension of your team. So we'll save you a lot of time, not just in needing or not needing to manage your own cloud or your own VDI stack, but we'll also assist with the installation and updating of software in the desktops. And we actually offer a 48-hour SLA for the installation and updating of software in the desktop. So you really don't need to do any kind of packaging or necessarily manage your own images. We can help you with that as well. If you want to, you do get access and you are able to do those things as Phil touched on. We offer a low predictable cost, which makes it very easy to budget. And so, with other cloud solutions, often you pay for consumption, so you don't necessarily know what the cost is going to be month to month. It might depend on how, it would depend on how much it is used. I have heard some horror stories in the past few weeks talking to some universities where particularly using things like Azure Labs, where they left a lot of servers running over the holidays over Christmas. Academics had set things up, hadn't switched them off again, and then in one case, there was, I think, a £50,000 bill in January when they got back from Christmas. So not what you want, really, but we can offer a kind of fixed annual cost so that you know what you're going to pay ahead of time. It's straightforward. And then just to touch on the pricing a little bit. So we price predominantly per concurrent user, annual seats. And what we do is we look at the types of software that you want to be able to run. And to make it easier for larger deployments, we have some different classifications of desktops. So small, medium, large, GPU if graphics are needed. So it becomes a kind of very simple exercise to just look at how many seats you need, which software you're running, what type of desktops you need, and then we can just do an easy calculation to work out that straightforward annual cost. I also touched a little bit on software licensing. So it is generally a bit easier to do the software licensing because a lot of our customers of the university estate, and so they can use the existing software licensing methods that you already have. So often makes it a little bit easier. And then just to talk a little bit about extending the lifespan of devices, just wanted to leave you with these thoughts and get you thinking about possible way that you can transition to cloud desktops, and that is to use existing devices and extend their lifespan. So many of our existing customers have taken this approach. It works out to be extremely cost effective. Essentially, you're taking devices that you might normally replace over a 3, 4, 5 year cycle, but as long as you can still boot them to a browser, it becomes very easy then to use a cloud desktop with those devices and obviously get the full performance of the cloud. And also then obviously from a BYOD point of view, things like initiatives such as low-cost loaner devices, so using things like Chromebooks, but with the ability to use a full Windows desktop and even with GPU where that's needed as well. So lots of customers that we've worked with using things like low-cost Chromebooks as loan devices, but then a full Windows or Linux desktop available to the students. Okay, so if you'd like to try Apporto for yourself, you can take a quick test drive on our site at apporto.com/try now. Or if you have questions or you'd like to discuss a pilot, please feel free to get in touch. I'd love to connect with you. It'd be great to hear from you all. And we can support pilots now. We're fully set up in the UK, so we can do that from our data centers here. And finally, just want to say a thank you from all of us, from Anthony, from Phil, from me, Phil Morgan. It's been a pleasure to introduce you to Apporto. So thank you for attending, and I hope we'll be in touch soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now.